Press any key to keep it on. There's no any key! Do I want to talk about my experience of mother rage and how on a instinctive primal survival level I think it is essential, and that, you know, there's studies and research and science that lets us know that a mother's amygdala after birth, during pregnancy and after birth, it grows. Amygdala is partly responsible for the fight or flight function, fight or run, and that of energy when there's a perceived threat, so that, you know, potentially that we can take care or protect the children more. And then potentially our cultural shame around the expression of anger, particularly with women, and they either internalize it and really are self-violent in their thoughts because of that self-internalized energy, or it goes on to the partner or the children. Should I talk about that and how curdled that is? I truly have an incredible partner. Absolute implicit trust in birth, in me and my instinctual, primitive, intuitive decisions for our son and mothering. He is generous and kind and enthusiastic. He takes responsibility for his wounds from his childhood and his relational hurts, and tends to that and really shows up in the trenches with me to repair that as parents and as adults and as lovers and partners and friends. He is completely and utterly involved in all of the decisions and really listening to me and my guidance of where I feel, changes and decisions with our son, and fucking stab him in the eye plenty of times in the last couple of years, both when I was pregnant and since becoming parents. I've looked at it, and that's what this is about. And we've tended to it together, you know, in the ways in which we both contributed to that, both ways, and our own relational, adaptive, dysfunctional tendencies that we've learned in our upbringing, in our families, and the ways in which we're healing that. But my point is that, and I wrote a post about this when I was, within the first year of motherhood, and I said, what if our rage is curdled grief? And I just want to caveat and say that before I was a mother, I rolled my eyes and felt that mothers complained too much, and just was not attracted to... I'm just going to move this because I just realised that I moved it with my head when I sat down. Test, yep. I was not attracted or called to be a mother at all. And when I fell pregnant with Annie, when I became pregnant, when I was pregnant, I knew that it was right. My whole system was at ease, and it was at rest, you know, with the looking at the stick with the lines, and okay. But psychologically, I was so conditioned to not want to be a mother because of the ways that I saw it go down, the ways that mothers acted, the ways that they spoke, how our culture, I had been influenced by culture and movies and conversations and impacted by dysfunctional, broken down, wounded mothers that inflicted a great deal of their emotional wounding onto me. It just wasn't anything that was very attractive to me. I had also heavily lent on the part of me that wanted to give and help, because I had adapted a sense of importance, adapted to find a sense of importance in the world through giving and helping in community, because I had felt deeply missed in my childhood by mother and my stepmother. So I was really riding that wave and quite externally successful and validated for it. And so when I became a mother, that just got annihilated from the inside. I just could not operate at the pace and the volume anymore. I was so changed. I am so changed by it. But I had to move much slower in order to honour what it is that I had the capacity for, because now every spiritual, energetic, emotional, mental, physical fiber of life force was moving into breastfeeding my child, tending to his needs all day, all night, in a way that we were actually not programmed to do, but only in the modern world. Modern family and modern parenting is this very isolated, singular, one mum, two child. It was, you know, for 99% of our existence as humans in hunter-gatherer communities and indigenous cultures who are still deeply connected to these ways, they raised the child as a community. It was you may have heard, like, it takes a village to raise a child. And so I think that has something to do with it, with the amount that is required for a child to thrive and develop mentally, build healthy attachment and relationship. The responsibility to one mother is fucking insane. I am so grateful for the mothers in my life and the maidens who got this before I was a mother, but I didn't. And I'm so sorry to all of my friends and community who became a mother before I was, who I judged, who I didn't revere, who I rolled my eyes at, who I just didn't fucking check in on. And I didn't support. Oh God, I'm sorry, I did not know. And that enrages me in ways that help me feel inspired to change that. And that rage, I think, is that you may have heard be a part of motherhood. You know, our biology and our neurochemistry and our brain changes that happen when we become a mother, about, you know, the amygdala getting bigger, which is responsible for fight or flight, which is a big part of anger and aggression, that is also shown to happen in fathers who are strong participants and presence in the role of parenting. Also happens then, so it's just not mothers. It's not gender. It's modern family or familiar. You know, it's parenting, participation and presence in parenting. So I think that's a part of it, and the intensity of it landing on one mother or just two parents, and maybe the support from the community, because my mother's dead, my grandmothers are dead. I'm pretty much disconnected from a lot of my family because of a conscious decision I made for what felt healthy for me. I've shared this story in other videos and times in my life, but yeah, we didn't have a community in that sense. I've had some incredible friends, and I love you and thank you so much for your guidance and support. But a lot of the time it was solo, and that's really unreasonable. Oh, the demand is just absolutely insane. And at the time, the father cannot fully comprehend. How could he? How could he? He literally doesn't have the same biology going on inside of him. He didn't hold the baby. He didn't birth the baby. He doesn't have the same primal instincts that are active in us, and the hormone changes and the fucking chaos that goes on inside of us. It's just like, how could they fully comprehend? They can only begin to try and attempt to understand the demand from us and the pressure that we can put upon ourselves, especially in the modern world of seeing the mistakes that our parents make and not wanting to make those, and the pressure that I've put upon myself to not make those mistakes. And you know, what I spend my career doing, which is reversing relational fractures and trauma in children that become adults that then, you know, live in adaptive responses their whole life and end up depressed or lost or wandering or dysfunctional or sick or ill from, you know, a lack of expression or a lack of authenticity or a lack of love, understanding, appreciation, acceptance, and being abandoned and dismissed. And all of this is my center of my career, so I put a lot of pressure on myself for this, which my beautiful partner reminds me to release plenty. Thank you. And there's that. So there's the biological, there's the self-pressure that I've put upon that I know that I share with others, or others share. And then there's the intergenerational trauma of the matriarchal line of grief and pain and agony that we are experiencing in our system as mothers from that which is not healed yet from the generations who came before us, combined with all of that. So the anger, the energy in the system, like from a somatic teacher perspective, in my world and my work, quick lesson on nervous system. When I studied medicine, this wasn't fully known, but Stephen Porges, Porges, who has educated the world about the polyvagal theory and trauma-informed work in facilitation and therapy, has made it more commonplace to understand the nervous system in this way. But even when I went to university to study medicine and become a radiation therapist, this wasn't there then. But our nervous system is there to keep us alive. It's not about winning, it's about survival. And so the primal instinctive part of our nervous system, when it perceives threat, we go into arousal. If we really perceive threat and we feel our life threatened, which in humans, caveat, if we're not running away from, if we're not a gazelle running away from a cheetah or a possum running away from a fox, and we're a human with high volumes of stimulation and the constant maybe threat to our emotional or spiritual well-being that we experience due to colonization and invasion and genocide and the intergenerational trauma that comes from that, and war and the carry-on effect from this, which is very real and very alive and very present and what we are all experiencing. When our system feels threatened, it's so intelligent, it produces a whole heap, like a huge of energy, so that we can either fight, we can fight the prey, defend ourselves, or we can run for our life and escape. And so we're doing that. So it gives us this boost of energy to do that. But if we are, for some reason, incapacitated, whether it be psychologically, emotionally, or physically unable to do either of those things, and our system perceives that it is life-threatening, including spiritual, mental, emotional, psychological, it will go into, so that's fight or flight, it will go into what's called dorsal vagal. So dorsal vagal is another branch of the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve, which is known as the wandering. Vagus means wandering in Latin, and it's a nerve that wanders, and it goes up and it goes down and it has branches. And the vagus nerve, the dorsal part of the vagus nerve, sorry, that's not important, but dorsal vagal, it's important, but not for this situation. Dorsal vagal is freeze, right? We've heard of freeze, but we, in medicine and in biology, and what you may have learned if you're around my age, of born in, the 80s or the late 80s, even the early 90s, you would understand that we have fight, flight, and freeze are together, but they're not. Fight and flight, freeze is what happens when the system overwhelms and it feels that it cannot or is not able to fight or run, and it goes into dorsal vagal, which is a freeze state. So it's hyper is fight or flight, hypo is a freeze state, and this is a flatline state, right? So the system just shuts down. So for a possum, its tongue will poke out, it'll go blue, its heart rate goes right down, it literally appears dead, because it is a survival mechanism, because there is an instinct in the predator that when the prey is dead, it actually loses its desire to kill. So it's a survival, it's a last resort to survive, to stay alive, because that's the goal. It's not to win, it's to stay alive. And so that happens and that kicks in. Now, in my experience of motherhood, a little bit more context. Trauma, and this is through one of my teachers, Peter Levine, and his work on somatic experiencing. He's a therapist. It helps us understand, and there's so many other, somatic healing, might I say, has been done by humans since we lived. Somatic meaning body, expression of the body, the felt sense, singing, movement, breath, dance, felt sense, like intimacy with our undercurrent of expressions of the energy moving in our body. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about somatic, right? It has been around forever, and there are so many branches and varieties and modalities of somatic therapy that exist in the world. Yoga is one of them, like all sorts of kind of movement, dance, yoga, and all of our Indigenous ancestors, which we all have Indigenous ancestors, those cultures who were connected to spirit and to the animate aspect of life and their community. Healing was always done somatically. It was always through voice or expression or tone, even inflicting pain to go into liminal states, to pushing themselves to near death or the edge of death to reach different states, because then they accessed different subconscious states where healing can happen at a deeper level on energetics. Repatterning and reprogramming happens. And so this was standard for, we go back, well, some cultures are still so alive with this beautifully, and a lot of us are connected to these cultures because we're trying to remember our Indigenous ways to heal in community. And it is known that when people go through, it's known in science that when people go through traumatic experiences, if they go back into community, they will heal faster. They won't have the trauma. So the trauma, through the lens of Peter Levine's work, is the charge that's not been processed. Because in the outer world, in the animal kingdom, an animal will discharge that. Once the threat is gone, if the threat's gone and they don't get eaten up, they will eventually thaw from that state, that free state. They will thaw once their environment is safe enough for long enough. They will thaw. Think of healing. Think of healing in trauma. Safe enough, threat's gone. They will start to thaw, and then the energy that was that the body created or produced to go into fight or flight, to run or to fight, needs to be discharged. And so they will shake. They will you shake. You see horses shake things off. You see animals. You see zebras. You see animals in the wild. They will shake the trauma off. Animals don't hold trauma except domesticated animals. Something to think about, hey? And humans, right? Mammals will shake this trauma off. They don't hold it. They don't store it. They discharge the energy. We don't. Well, we do in healing environments if it's safe enough, right? And we get this the right environment, safety, the space, and the permission. Then we can begin to thaw, and then that felt sense can come through. And if the facilitators are educated enough or intuitive enough, safe enough in themselves, they will let that expression move through. And, this is what we teach in ISOMA, Kurt and I, and this is from our teachers and all this Indigenous, beautiful wisdom from these Indigenous teachers that we have had as well. Understand that our sense of deep, deep, deep trust in this process and the expression and the discharge of that energy can come in the form of tears and shaking and shuddering and purging and yawning and movement and dance and all these different beautiful ways that can feel really intense and scary for the person experiencing them. And our job is to help them, pendulate or titrate that so that that's not too intense and it doesn't re-traumatize the situation, and it's not reliving the traumatic experience. It's just being with the sensations and the energy in the body to let it move through. So, coming back to motherhood and to parenting, what I felt was a lot of these built up energies, this charged energy that hadn't been discharged, the trauma in my system, not just in my lifetime, but I would dream of it in these liminal states of breastfeeding for, I breastfed Annie until he was 2.5. And you get all these really wild, cool hormones that go on when your child feeds and suckles, that you get this oxytocin kick, and this whole thing in the system just creates this beautiful, strong, safe attachment between the two of you. And when you sleep next to your child and they sideline and you're kind of asleep and they wake up and do it, I would go out into these liminal states. And it was in my relationship, it felt safe enough for me to begin to thaw, and all of my own, and also I could feel the matriarchal side of my mother. In another video recently, I have shared about my mother and the amount of trauma in her system, the amount of addiction she experienced and what she held and what I felt in utero, like just come and start to thaw. And that's a lot of grief and a lot of pain and a lot of sadness that has been suppressed, because you bring all of that together, all that which I have said together, and you layer all those, that anger and that rage and that trauma, and you kind of put them all on top of each other. And then you get the cultural conditioning for it not to be okay as a woman or as a human to get mad or to not be in control of your emotions, or to the need to be so together, you know? And you put that deep, deep, deep conditioning over that. Well, you've got this backed up grief and sadness and pain and agony and trauma from, you know, generations of what has been done to women and children and our families through war and colonization and genocide and modernity. And the conditioning to not lose your shit, and it fucking curdles. It curdles, and it's bitter, and it's ugly, and it's dark. And I went through these really dark, depressed. I was reflecting on it when I was knowing I was coming here for filming, of just how dark things got for me during motherhood at times. And I believe, from all of the women that I have held through that in my work with rights work and healing work and trauma and the retreats that we run and the ceremonies, that much of the rage, or a part of the rage, is this deep, curdled, unprocessed charge that either gets internalized because it's wrong to be that angry or that unhinged or that untamed. You know, fucking tame yourself. Get your shit together, woman. How many times have you said that to yourself? I've said that painfully plenty of times to myself. So we internalize it, and then we are self-violent, or we subjugate it, and we repress it. And in the words of Martin Shaw, what you exile will grow hostile towards you. What you exile will grow hostile towards you. And I absolutely became hostile to myself. I became more self-critical and doubting and diminishing of myself than I ever have been in my whole life. And that really shook me, and that shocked me, because I hadn't experienced that before. But I believe it's part of this internalization of all of this trauma that was thawing out since motherhood, since becoming a mother. So yeah, it either gets internalized and you just get enraged, or the people closest to you cop it. Your partner, for a lot of people, that's their children and that's their partner. And then you're like, who the fuck am I? Why am I so angry and crazy and wild? What is happening? And it's because all of this is just coming out of us. It's seeping out of us. Side note, I've had discussions in the last months, and it's becoming a part of Alchemy's work, and it did in the last years. And the work that we do is like helping mothers re-access that quite powerful place and no longer be the prey in their life. Be able to be the prey, but also be able to be the predator again. You know, reclaim that position fiercely. But also work with Michelle Palasia, who was our birth keeper, who's Marga, who holds that wisdom of crone. Is just so incredibly powerful to hold spaces for women to let this grief and this sadness and this pain and this rage through, and give ourselves the permission and the space and the safety to untame to unravel, to become wild again, to really let it come through. And that is a huge part of the healing in the feminine and in the women. And so working with this and understanding this helped me come to a real place of gratitude, but such deep appreciation and compassion and real embodied empathy and understanding of what we hold as women and parents and fathers. But I can really only speak literally biologically from the perspective of being female and a mother in the modern world, and inheriting what my ancestors endured and did and didn't get the safety or the permission to let that energy discharge. Because when that energy is in our system, and so I'll just speak to it really briefly, but when that energy is in our system, our nervous system actually can't regulate properly. It will bounce between hyper, so on to fucking flatlined, unmotivated, depressed, exhausted, hypo. So it goes hyper, hypo, hyper, hyper. Bipolar, right? This biology, this primal instinctive intelligence becomes pathologized as this thing that is our fault or happening to us, instead of seeing what happened inside of us, what's happening inside of us that we need to complete, that we need to resolve, so that our system can move fluidly between these states of fight and flight, of arousal, of ventral vagal and dorsal vagal, like these three states in the nervous system, to work harmoniously together when we need to. And this is a central piece of my work in regards to the trauma healing and the way that I approach it in that, I guess, a little bit more of a clinical sense. But we bring in the fifth direction, we bring in the spirit and the wisdom of the earth and that right relationship. But because this is all relational work, that we're dealing with. The root cause of what so much of our trauma is relational work, because of the unavailability and the state of the parents and the lack of capacity in nuclear families to be able to be what our children need us to be in order for them to feel safe and and develop healthy attachment. We are wired to bond. We are wired to relate. We are wired to be close to each other. And for so many of us, it's just not in the relational capacity of so many of our parents, and it wasn't available. And now we're undoing that work. We're changing that. And it wasn't until I moved through this that I could become really, truly at ease as a mother. Did I love it? Have I been in reverence of it? Is it the most extraordinary thing that's ever happened to me? Yeah. But honestly, until I moved through this, the depth of the heaviness that I'm speaking to, it was too hard to continue that way. And now I feel, truthfully, I have so much more access to my heart. I'm so raw and tender all the time. But it's real. And it's a real honor to be a mother in this world. And I don't think I ever realized just how deep the healing would be. Because rite of passage work, it is a rite of passage. You have to be removed from your environment. You go through transition and change and liminal states and transformation, and you turn into goop. And then you go back and you return and you give what you have embodied through your unraveling and your dismembering back to your community, back to your family. Yeah. And there's so much yet to come. I'm just at the beginning. But here we are. And so many of us and so many women so many sisters and mothers and grandmothers that I am feeling so deeply connected to in ways that I just simply wasn't able to before because of that wound, that mother wound, that feminine wound, that real fracture inside of me as a woman in this world that's repairing. Rage. It's a different conversation to start from this angle, but I'm here for it.